Let's shift gears now rather seriously and talk about something rather uplifting. A group of cyclists are gearing up to hit the tar in a bid to keep children in school. The 1965 ride is a 850-kilometer cycle tour between Johannesburg and Queenstown in the Eastern Cape to raise funds for an educational scholarship and bursary fund for deserving students at quality schools. Now, many of these are in the Eastern Cape, where infrastructure remains a challenge, as we know from the stories we carry here on eNCA all the time. To find out more, we're joined in the studio by Tony Frost from the 1965 Ride Organization. Also joining our conversation is Dr. Jojisam Luzipo-Adu, who's here in the studio with us. And in Cape Town, we've got Kojo Owusu-Sekyere, who is, the two of them were of the first recipients of this initiative. So we've got a full squad of people to tell us all about the 1965 Ride initiative and the impact that they've had. Tony, thank you so much for joining us. Jojisam, thank you, and Kojo in Cape Town. Tony, if we can start with you. We've spoken before, and I know from experience how passionate you are about this project. The fact that you don't age also means that all this cycling is doing you good, but what keeps you going is the impact you've been able to have on young people's lives here in South Africa. For those who haven't heard of 1965 Ride, give us a quick synopsis of how it all started.
It's all about education. You know, anybody who lives in this country has to know that education must be probably the top priority for our country. So it started in end of 2010 really. I went back to my old school in Queenstown. And I mean, I went with fear and trepidation actually, because I'd heard all the bad news stories of the Eastern Cape education. And frankly, Marcelle, I came away inspired. You know, I listened to those boys sing, and Xhosa boys can sing. And I thought to myself, I need to do something. And I'd always wanted to do a long ride, so it seemed like to me, this is the opportunity. I'll ride from Joburg to Queenstown. If somebody wants to join me, that's cool. Otherwise, I'll do it by myself. We've been blessed, you know. This is our 13th tour that we start on Wednesday. We've raised enough money to award over 200 bursaries. Jojisam and Kojo were the first two that we awarded, and we're just so proud of it.
Now, listen, for me, a long ride would be from Auckland Park in Johannesburg to Rosebank. So
that's a long ride for me too,
we'll agree to disagree on what a long ride is. And before I speak to these two inspirational young people, talk to us about how the funding has worked around it, because that's rands and cents. You're not just doing this because it's a nice thing to do, as passionate as you are. Talk to me about the numbers of young people that you've been able to help, and also how you go about deciding who gets what bursary, and indeed the idea of keeping them in quality schools in South Africa, because we all know that inequality is very real in South Africa, and it's felt very much in our education sector.
So the first thing is every person who cycles with us has to raise 30,000 Rand. There's no entry fee, but at 30,000 Rand we look after their accommodation and meals from here to Queenstown, Komani. So that's the first thing. So every cyclist raised 30,000 Rand. We all go out and speak to sponsors, corporates and others to raise as much money as we can. Our average income per cyclist over the 12 years past is about 50,000 Rand. So clearly some of the cyclists are doing a lot more than the 30,000 Rand. So given that, and given the fact that we're now into our 13th year, we've raised enough money to give 200 kids a chance at education at a decent school. It's not for me to define a decent school, but we look for schools that are producing sustainably good results, not just in the classroom. Because one of the injunctions we give to the people that work with us, yes, we want the geniuses, but we want the people that are doing well at academics, but also participating in the cultural and general life of the school, because we want to produce
an all-rounder.
Yeah, we want to produce leaders for our country. And you know, we've got two very good examples here. So how do the bursaries get awarded? Very good question. It's a question we often get asked, and often one that's overlooked. So we work with an organization in Queenstown called the Queenstown Education Foundation. They have 11 member schools. Our bursaries go to kids at those 11 member schools. Okay. So the Queenstown Education Foundation asks the schools, each of those 11 schools, to produce nominations. They have a bursary, the Queenstown Education Foundation, QEF, has a bursary committee. They sit together, their members there from all of the schools, to make sure that they they nominate people of consistent quality for our bursary program.
Well, then let's bring in these bursaries, two of the first recipients of this bursary. Let's start here in the studio. Dr. Jojisam Luzipo-Adu, thank you so much. Now, we've heard where this all started, but then tell me about where Jojisam found herself. 2014, I believe, was the first time you received this bursary. What was going on in your life at the time? How old were you? And I'm sure by that stage you'd never heard of this 1965 ride. These old guys who are driving all of these kilometers to help where they can.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So in 2014, I was in grade 11. Yeah, things were, I mean, school was very stressful, but also life had changed a bit for me, and social circumstances as well. So it was a bit of a stressful all-around time for me, and I just heard about this bursary and I thought, let me apply. My LO teacher edged me on and she said, just apply, see what happens. And yeah, I applied, and then I had an interview, and yeah, that's how I met Tony.
And that bursary took care of you for grades 11 and grade 12.
Yes.
How much of an impact does that kind of a surety that that's one less thing that you and your family have to worry about? What kind of impact does it have on you, especially knowing then that it means that you've got less to stress about and more to focus on your school books, as it were?
Exactly, yeah. So for me, first of all, I think it was twofold. It was just it encouraged me to work harder. I felt like a group of people were behind me and they saw something in me and they thought, let's just try push her. And so that was very encouraging for me to just continue on my studies. But in terms of finances, it helped my mom, I think. And I could just see a change in her as well. She was just more calm and just more like she was able to engage at home as well. And so that helped just with my own being able to focus at school,
even to breathe a little bit,
just exhale, yeah.
And our parents do carry so much when it comes to those kinds of responsibility. I totally feel you on that. Let's go to Cape Town now, where we find Kojo Owusu-Sekyere, one of the other first bursary recipients. Kojo, thanks for your time. I've heard there from Jojisam just talking about the impact that bursary had on her and her family at the time. Where did you find yourself the first time you heard of 1965 Ride?
Well, actually, I met Tony when I was in grade 12 at Queen's College, and we kicked off quite well. And during the year, we spoke a bit, and he mentioned that there was an opportunity to receive a bursary. When I was in grade 9, my father had passed away, so things were a bit strenuous at home. But I think the overall relief that my mother felt was quite good at the time. What separates this kind of bursary from other bursaries in the country is that they're very good at keeping tabs on your life, even after school. It feels more like a family, and they're always involved. They always contact you. They find out what's going on in your life. So you have this overwhelming support coming in from all angles to ensure that you have a normal high school career, at least.
And then kick into your tertiary educations. Tell us what's happened with your life. Where you find yourself now all these years on, with Tony still being a big cheerleader?
So after high school, I went to the University of the Free State. I studied accounting. I did my postgrad in accounting. Then I spent 1 year lecturing at the University of the Free State. And then I decided to go to Shanghai for some years, traveled a bit, and also worked abroad. And then I came back last year in August, where I now work as an accounting teacher at the South African College School in Cape Town.
Goodness me, that is a mouthful, and money well spent for the bursary as well, Tony. But before I come back to you, Jojisam, fill us in on what's happened since that grade 11 and grade 12.
Sure. So I graduated or matriculated rather, at Queenstown Girls High in 2015, and then I went on to the University of Stellenbosch in 2016 for med school. Graduated in 2021 with my Bachelor's of Medicine and Surgery, and now I'm currently in my second year internship at one of the Johannesburg hospitals.
Can I just tell Tony, please don't encourage any of your bursars to go into journalism, because you're not going to get this kind of impressive CV at all. But Tony, he speaks there about how you've helped create quite a family. It's not just, here's your bursary, don't screw this up, finish high school and off you go, we won't ever hear from you again. Why is it important for you to stay in touch with these impressive young people?
Marcelle, I have to be a little bit personal here. My father died when I was 13 years old. So my mother was doing 3 jobs to look after her 4 children. And I was fortunate to be the first recipient of a bursary from my old school, Queen's College. And you know what made the difference actually wasn't the money. It was the contact. It was the belief in the teachers and the community long past the time I left school. And so when we set up the bursary fund, we decided, you know, we want these people to feel that there are mentors out there that care, that there's a contact out there that cares. If you need help, talk to us. You know, even if you don't need help, talk to us. So we've maintained contact, as you can hear, for as long as we possibly can. And, you know, we've been successful with some. We haven't been as successful with maintaining contact with others as much as we would like. But to us, it's a really important part of the process because, you know, you work in an industry where human relationships are like critical, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so for us, personal development, personal growth is related directly to the relationships you build through life.
Because indeed, like you said, you're investing not just in kids who are good in academics. Yes, that's a plus, and they're able to create a good life for them, but you want to send decent human beings out in the world. So not everybody will become doctors or accountants or CEOs, but the hope is that the little footing and support you've given them has put them on the road to have perhaps and hopefully a better life than what they had at that time.
Yeah, look, we're thrilled to have Joji and Kojo with us.
Yeah.
But, you know, we also want people who just in their communities doing good stuff.
Or with
because
their
that's where it happens, or with their families.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Kojo, if I could come back to you, you've made teaching and lecturing seems to be a golden thread through your career so far. And Tony, again here, mirroring that, speaking about the importance of relationships and mentoring. Is that something that's important to you, knowing what you've been through in your lifetime, both as a young person at that time during a difficult time and now as a professional shooting out the lights in your career?
Look, I think when you leave high school, you leave quite confused. You don't actually know what's awaiting you in the big world. So it's good to have mentors in the school settings that can help encourage the students about certain career choices they may have. And I think the way education is evolving nowadays, we are seen more as facilitators than teachers. So I remember at school, I had certain teachers that I looked up to who would always help us, give us advice. And I think that that's what perhaps is lacking in some of the schools in the country now. There are a lot of issues in the education system in South Africa. And I think that when you have strong mentors at the schools who are teachers and you have external people coming in, it's quite easy to make a success of most students that attend those schools.
Jojisam, there seems to be a golden thread in this conversation around mentorship and a sense of community, really, knowing that there's somebody out there that's willing to lend you a hand, somebody that you perhaps didn't even know. I wanted to know how that plays a role in your decision to go into medicine. We all know the challenges being faced by those in the health sector in South Africa, but also how important it is in so many of our communities. What part has that played in your decision to go into this field, and what are some of your goals in that field?
I think the common sort of thread I had within myself was, you know, with every patient you see or the few minutes that you have with them, I think it was more what kind of impact can I make in their life? How can I, you know, if they're in a stressful environment already, how can I help them? How can I just make life less difficult in that small 20 minutes that I see them? And I think when I decided to become a doctor, it was just rather not what I can do or how far I can be in my career, rather what kind of doctor do I want to be, and how I can make an impact, how I can just brighten a little child's face, like if they're, you know, whatever they came in for on that day. But I think it was more just how I could help, how I could take the common thread of we're not providing pressure to you, we just want to know how you're doing. The question of how you're doing each day, whenever Tony would call us and just check in. I think that's kind of what I wanted to bring within my career. Where do I see myself? I don't know. I think at the moment I'd like to be a surgeon, but every month it changes. It changes.
And you know what? That's okay. The fact is that your heart is definitely in the right place, and this is a field that you've chosen with your heart as well as your brain. So we do thank you for coming in to share that inspirational story with us. Tony, very quickly, your plug. I mean, Kojo and Jojisam are great adverts for the work that your organization has been able to do. What more would you like to see happen, and where can people find out more if they want to get involved?
Piles of money.
Yeah, there we go.
We're very lucky. Laurie Safari Lodge this year have given us a weekend for two. The value of that is 83,000 Rand, and we're running a competition, so people can check in on our website, www.1965ride.co.za, and there you can also donate anything. You know, every cent counts. So the more cents we get, the more people we can help. And you know, we always say, Marcelle, when you help people in really poor, impoverished communities, you don't just help one person.
Yep.
You help the family, you help the community, you help the nation.
Or just families who are going through a rough patch and can't see their way on the other side.
100%.
Well, it seems to be the case here with these two amazing ambassadors that you brought with you this afternoon. We thank you so much for doing that. Much needed in the current rather negative news cycle we find ourselves in. So all power to all of you. Kojo Owusu-Sekyere, one of the first bursary recipients in Cape Town. We thank him for his time this afternoon, as well as Dr. Jojisam Luzipo-Adu. We look forward to seeing how where you both go in your careers and how many more people's lives you can touch. And so to you, Tony Frost from the 1965 ride. They're kicking off, they're hitting the tar next Wednesday for the 13th edition of the 850-kilometer cycle tour from Johannesburg and Queenstown. And you can find out all about it on their social media platforms.